So this morning, my husband and I were going to discuss the genoning of man and woman, and of course, we'll talk about who did it, why they did it, what results came from it to this present moment. There's this book out here I had never seen before, Slay Species of God, or I would call it Elohim's, the story of humankind from the cradle of humankind. And hue is just a frequency or a color. So human is a color of mankind. So you can be on any spectrum of color, angry or joyful. Initially, we always hear the story talks about the Garden of Eden,
And Adam and
and you hear of this this creator making them from the clay. Adam, which is actually Atom, from clay, and then the rib, that's where the woman comes from his side. So I would say from inside of him, which would be intuition. Okay. However, in actuality, that's probably not how it happened.
Yeah, I think yeah, to be honest,
You
and
know,
if you look at it from they're looking at it from a Christian standpoint, and that's where you come up with Adam and Eve. And what happens is that you got to look at it from all standpoints because when you look at it from all standpoints, you see that if you look at it historically and you look at, the Christian origin, it came out some 2,000 years ago, but before that, they took that from Sumerians who had the same type of story that was thousands of years before the Christian story or history. So, and it models that same story. And you can look at the story of Gilgamesh. You can look at some other stories in there, and it's all documented through archaeology. And when you look at the clay tablets and some of the writings on the walls and stuff, it predates the Christian uh, clay pots that were found in the cave, and it's the same, almost the same storyline. So you have to wonder, you know, did they pick up this story from somebody else and they just changed the names? You know, change the names, same game. So you have to take all of that in context and make sure that you're looking at it and you have open mind and that you're actually uh, not just being in
bias.
feeling, you know, but be unbiased and look at it from a different standpoint.
Right.
So when you look at it from a different standpoint, um, instead of it being a spiritual thing,
Hmm.
you can look at it from a historical point and say, wait a minute, what makes sense? And what makes sense is that you know you had to come from somewhere.
So, like he said, when you try to only deal with it in the context of spiritual, then spiritual is in another dimension. And since it's in another dimension, there will be no proof thereof of it. So, when you don't have ample proof of something, then you can placate people in this play or this game called life. You can procrastinate things. Oh, well, this happened, but yet or this going to happen, but yet because everything's in an veiled world. However, we need to be in this world, understanding this world.
And to talk about it off of that, like you said, uh, and the argument becomes, when something isn't as it seems, you'll hear try the spirit by the spirit.
Right.
Well, like you say, you have to deal with what's in this world. And
Because
what's
if you try the spirit by the spirit, then it's still in another dimension.
correct.
And so, even though you may get a feeling, it could be a good feeling or a bad feeling, that feeling still has to subject itself to reality. It can't just still be in the unveiled. It must manifest itself here on reality because if it does not, then that means that it is not substantial, meaning there is no transparency of seeing what it is. And if you cannot see what it is, if it doesn't tell you who it be, And it just says, I am that I am. It's telling you, look, I can be whatever I want to be, and I don't have to tell you anything. And that's the reason why you need evidence. Evidence is not an insult to intelligence. Evidence is a complementary thing to intelligence, because if you're an intelligent person, you lean to your understanding. Now, they tell you lean not to thine own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge someone else, and that person will direct your path. Not to be wise in thine own eyes. You need to walk in fear. And fear who? The one that's telling you not to be leaning to your own understanding. Now, that sounds sarcastic. Well, I didn't write it. I just know how to quote it because I was raised in it. I want to read right here where it talks about Enki creation story. I typed that in Google. It's simple and plain. For lack of knowledge, people actually do perish, because that's what Enlil says. That's what his brother says. And his brother is absolutely correct. They do say some stuff that's spot on. Now it says here in the Sumerian story, Enki in Nama, Enki the god of wisdom, or let's say the dogma of wisdom, because God, when you reverse it, you duality it, reverse it, it's dog. So you always hear about dogma. So dogma has to do with ideas that are dogmatic, that you're supposed to receive as wisdom, knowledge, and good understanding. See, you don't supposed to be wise in your own eye. You're supposed to seek wisdom, knowledge, and good understanding for yourself. You're supposed to let somebody else tell you what it is, because you're supposed to be childlike in your understanding. See, however, I don't even want to deal with the Christian's standpoint of it, but my husband can. I want to deal with just the factuality of, if you don't have information, you definitely will cast off listening to people who may say something different than what you already know, or may feel like you're rubbing you the wrong way. You may say, I like you up to this point, now I don't like you. Well, you don't have to like the person, you just hear the information. I listen to people that I don't say I like them. It's just I'm listening to information. Now it says, Enki, the god of wisdom, create. So the term God for me does not mean much. It's a general term. It's like you got washing powder called Gain washing powder, Tide washing powder. Well, then you got the store washing powder. So the term God is like the store washing powder. Pick a name, any name. Oh, just say God. Okay. So, because like God means Allah. You know what I'm saying? So, but Allah actually was one of the brothers as well that came to the earth to look for. Well, he accidentally looked for. He accidentally found gold here. But anyway, that's not the point. According to the story, the younger brother rebelled after digging the beds for the Tigris and Euphrates River. So they were mining the earth, getting it prepared for looking for gold. Okay. And they have technology that can do that. Like I believe the Grand Canyon was mined as well in some parts of Africa in the West, upper part of Africa, actually. Enki suggested the immortals create humans to do work instead. Enki devised the image of man after the image of the gods. So they are considered the gods, which meaning they are humanoids, because in order for us to look like humans, they have to look like humans too. So we were made in their image and likeness. So the image is a mirage, and the likeness meaning to look like. So whatever their essence is, we took part of that, and we took I mean, the, we were already here, but they took what was here and edited it. Let's just say that. Enki devised the image of man after the image of the gods and the goddesses. Okay, so they're gods and goddesses. Okay, that makes sense. And Narasaga molded it in clay. So here is the molder of the bodies, which was the woman, meaning she took of something and she put something with something. Now, of course, Inky's idea, he had to bring something in there too. So, guys have things and females have things, okay? So, anyway, Enlil's blood gave it life and intellect. Now, from what I remember, it was not this person saying Enlil. From my remembrance, it wasn't Enlil, it was Enki. hmm It was Enki. So it says here, Enki, maybe that was a typo, I don't know. Enki also gave mankind the ability to speak one language to communicate with each other. No, this was the Tower of Babel. The Tower of Babel was a story of confusion. These gods uh, are the authors of confusion. So anyway, that's not the part I want to deal with, because of course we know this is AI generated, so AI playing games here. But since we already know, my husband and I already know dubious, dubious, what are they called? Authors who talk about this in their works. We already know from many, many, many archaeologists, many people writing books, AI has nothing on them. Thank you, AI, but you don't have nothing on them.
Correct. And what we're doing is just laying down the foundation of what we actually want to talk
Talk
about.
about, yeah.
So, when you hear about, you know, that, that they were created in their image, so if they were created in their image, so of course, uh, he taught them how to speak, or, and gave them language, because they didn't know what language to speak. Okay, so then you get into, well, if he gave them, uh, he created them in his image or in her image,
Right, both
then they're
of
going to have their thoughts,
them.
and it's almost like your kids. When you look at your kids, you know, and you realize, oh, I do that sometimes. And you look at your kid, and your kid is doing the same thing that they didn't even actually watch you do, but they're doing it. And you're like, wow, that's amazing that they're doing something that I didn't teach them, but I do,
Right.
you know, and so it's what they call genetically encoded in them to do it.
Hmm.
So we're genetically encoded to do certain things just based upon that. So I'll let my wife go into what we're going to talk about.
Well, let me. You got me stirred up. So that was a good point. Because because we've been Geno, not from the original. They didn't make. They really didn't make our bodies. They took because they had already been making bodies half. They're called centaurs, half fish, half woman.
Yeah, looking at it, like it says that Enki is often depicted with the horn crown of divinity. And I think back to the old Thor movies, with Marvel, and you look at Thor and you look at all of they were not saying that they didn't have strength already without those power suits, but when they put those suits on, which looked like Viking uniform, Viking suits and stuff, a lot of them had horns on them. So if I was, let's say, a native or something on an island, never seen this stuff before, I see somebody drop down, oh, I'd be like, oh, he's a supreme being, you know, because I've never seen it before. I've never seen something, all my neighbors and everybody else, nobody can fly, but then I see this person flying down from the sky. Oh, that's a supreme being. That's as they say, a god, a god, you know. And so it's almost like, we see something go across the sky, and we say, oh, it's a UFO. It's a UFO. Well, yeah, it is. It's an unidentified flying object. And then, you know,
Exactly.
10 years later, or 15 years later,
Mhm.
you know, or 20 years later, we find out, hey, that's the same thing I saw 20 years ago. And lo and behold, it's an Air Force B 2 bomber that looked like a wing that you had never seen before, but then you see it again, you're like, hey, oh, we had that 20 years ago. That was the
Exactly.
unidentified flying object.
Exactly.
You know, so I think we get hoodwinked because it's people's history or her history, you know, that people push out to get people to believe that,
Right. The
you know,
narrative.
the
Yeah.
narrative. And so, because they already know what history they're trying to put out, whoever
Right.
they are, they'll push it on to people, and people believe anything that they read or see.
I say who they are the Anunnaki because the Anunnaki have been here way before the biblical writings, way before the holy books writings, all these different books. These guys and gals were the ones who were propagating propagating the world, and they still are. And some of these people uh, are reincarnate, just like Inky was reincarnate as the person of Jesus and then you got Yeshua being Joshua, and Moses being an Anunnaki, just like Noah. All these people have these gifts and abilities, and they're miraculous. But these people have different names. But the part I want to talk about was, of course, Enki being a scientist, and then there are female scientists that come from Anunnaki, a planet called Nibiru. These people, when I call them people, people told they're gods. They're people because God is just a general term of generic. It's a generic term. So these humanoids genome our DNA, not from. Of course, they say they formed us out of clay. Supposedly, I come from the side of a man, because I'm just a womb of a man, and I carry a womb to carry children. I want to talk about seem as if when in the storytelling, I'm gonna call it a storytelling in the Genesis book. In the storytelling, and I believe the story for like 40 plus years. In the storytelling, until I got more knowledge, and we get more knowledge, you get more wisdom and understanding. I stopped perishing in my understanding because I gathered more information from different authors. There's more than 60 authors in this one book, from the Tanakh to the New Testament, Old Testament to the New Testament. And once I gathered more information that was older than this book, I was I was like, okay, there's no way you have a Elohim, male, masculine and feminine, making these. I don't even want to say, because look, you got in the biblical story someone being made out of clay. Then you got Nebuchadnezzar, the two different kind of materials made from his foot. Anyway, I could go really further into that, but what I'm saying is, yes, they took they took elements of the earth, they took blood, they took semen, the guy part, and they put it in our genome. Now, genome editing still exists today, but the part I want to talk about is my part, the part where I came here in an avatar of a female, and that part of the story needs to be definitely transparent. No one's making it transparent. Everybody says, "Oh, we came here through a decision." Okay, okay, and we got some type of contract. Okay,
That's
okay.
true. It was a decision, because it was a decision, not the decision that you made. It was a decision that, hey, um, I need a worker. We're tired. Or we gonna rebel. The younger, as you
GG, the
call,
lesser gods.
yeah.
Yeah.
So they had to come up with a solution, and the solution was to come up with as the book said right here that we're looking at, slave species of God, meaning that you had to come up with somebody that could work. So after many trial and errors, in the Petri bowl, as we'd say,
Yeah,
they
petri dish.
came up with man molded out of clay, which is just a shell. The shell is consisting of everything that they came up with on the inside,
Right.
and so that was
All
man.
the atoms.
Correct. And so they came up with the atoms, and then they realized, hey, we got something here. We got the atoms here, and the atoms were good workers. They did what they were told to do. Then they realized, wait a minute, we got to continue to go back to this petri bowl to create these atoms. We need to make it to where these atoms can
Multiply themselves.
multiply
Yeah.
themselves. So that's when they came and they took from the Adam,
ADAM.
yeah, they ATOM.
Same thing, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
they took from the atom, you know, the essence of that atom, which they say rib. I say, yeah, it could have been from his side. They took something from his side,
Or bone.
a
Yeah.
bone, a
His
marrow,
marrow. Yeah.
and they created Eve. And when they created Eve, they wanted a female version like themselves. That's why you had Enki and Nisharshka, which is his half sister, and they took some of her essence and his essence, and they made Eve.
That's called incest, right?
Correct. And then what they did was that they wanted to make sure that Eve could reproduce, so she had a womb, which is a woman womb.
Yeah.
That's a man with a womb.
Right.
Okay, so they that was a successful uh, experiment. So
Yeah.
Eve could have uh, children. So
Hmm.
now you have Adam, who is out there working,
getting what the gods needed from the mines or whatever you want to call it, gold, whatever they had him doing.
But those are the other Adams,
That's what I'm
right?
saying. So
Yeah,
those were the Adam
outside of the
outside of
special
the
garden.
first, not the first Adam.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were other Adams
Yes.
before this so-called first Adam,
Yes.
because that's the people outside that Cain was
Yes.
talking about. I'm gonna be out there with them people. Them were
Correct.
the first experiments. Yeah.
Correct. So now you got Adam and Eve.
Hmm.
Okay. So if you think about it, Adam was created for physical labor, physical, anything to do with physicality. That was Adam. And you look at it and look at it today, and you always say, well, man is stronger than woman. Okay,
Hmm.
because he was physically made to be stronger than the woman.
Gino
He
made,
was
yeah.
physically made to be uh, physical.
Hmm.
And the woman was genetically genome
Right.
to have kids,
Thank you, sir.
genetically genome to
No, thank you.
actually uh, be smarter than Adam. Because Adam, and when I say smarter, uh, it, it it was just the way it was. You know, Adam was created to be more physical,
Yeah.
and the woman had to be smarter in order, because if she's having the kids, then they wanted her to be able to teach the kids, be able to train the kids, and what they needed to do, because they wanted to be hands off. Enki, Enlil, sister, they wanted to be hands off, so they needed a teacher. They needed somebody that could actually, uh, I guess, keep the foundation going. You know.
So you would think about, according to let's talk about the biblical story. According to the biblical story, and there are many stories prior to the biblical story, because everybody feed, it's like plagiarism actually. But let's just deal with the plagiarized story of Adam and Eve. So you have them being made by a Elohim or a God. Let us make man. Well, that was Elohim. That's Enki and all the other scientists, and they decided they're going to make man and their likeness and their image. So the image part is the DNA ladder, the Jacob's ladder, the strands. So they went in and they removed things because man was already here on Earth. Man doesn't really come from Earth. Earth is just part of. We just always, because we are all part of being creator. We all everywhere at all times. But I don't want to talk about all that. However, we're just being limited. This is what the discussion is about. How have man been limited, and how has woman been limited based off of the genoning of our bodies? The body, the avatar, and our brain, which is inside the body, has been programmed or genome to carry out certain rules. My husband was saying earlier about man having this thing put in him to be a laborer, to just be pretty much the bulk of the slavery. Whereas the woman not being as physical, because her design wasn't as physical, her design was to be a caregiver, but also in her caregiving, she was also Gino to be a subordinate, a worshiper, I mean, I would even dare to say a nagger, somebody that asks questions, because man wasn't Gino to answer questions. Woman was Gino to ask questions, because it's called intuition. She came, supposedly in the story, she came out of the side of a man, out of the rib of a man, out of the heart of a man. The Gino part they got out made her to be like that. Where ultimately she got told that she was cursed with having labor, which would be the pain in her labor, which would be part of her carrying. So she would care even more because she suffered to birth whatever it was that was cursed to her. So she's being cursed with having laborious births, which that was part of her genome, to be the womb to carry the children. But in your suffering, when you suffer through something, you care even more about it. So she got impregnated. Now that they figured out how to cause Adam and Eve to procreate, and they start working, they no longer had to put their Inky no longer had to put his sperm and all that inside the process, because that's what they did. That's why we were like them, because they did that kind of stuff. And he puts his sperm in dirt, and all of the Anunnaki women that was in the laboratory. Go find out the story. But anyway, the issue for me is for the woman in the Bible story, in the biblical story, she was said, because she ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because she was on her tree, the tree of life, or the tree of life, and the tree of good and evil, in the tree in the midst of the garden, the mind, the third eye. In her third eye, she Inky put in her third eye an understanding when he didn't suppose to go when Enlil came and got angry at him and said, "Hey, what have you done?" When he came in the cool of the day, Enlil was the administrator. He was a brother that kept rules and regulations. He was the big dog. He's bigger than Inky, meaning he has more authority than Inky. Even though Inky is the one that gets the credit for editing man, him and Yana and the other ones, and the Nai Harshka name. It was a lot of them that worked together to let us make man. And they always leave out the fact that the reason why there's male and female is because there were women, humanoid, Anunnakis, designing. And so I feel that in the designing, they had to start off with two because uh, it's two standing there. Why would I make a male? If I need to make slaves, I have to start off originally with two. So the design definitely would be, let's take this and let's add this because the goal is to make two, like the two DNA strands. Let's make two. 23 here, 23 there. Was that chromosomes? So let's make two. So that's what they did. In the process, for the female in the biblical story was cursed because she got knowledge from Enki. Enki gave her to eat of the tree. Now, I can't say that, something else didn't go on. But she got the understanding, the intuition.
What was supposedly the cursing that came upon
Yeah, I was just saying about childbearing being increased because she was already having some pains in childbearing. Yeah, and
her? Okay, and the other one was supposedly that she was supposed to be submit uh, unto her husband, or Adam. Adam. Okay, I think that was part of it, but I'm going to explain it. Okay,
you talking about the biblical story?
the biblical story.
Okay, from my recollection of the biblical story, there were I don't we have to pull that up because
Okay.
I'm not saying the biblical story is correct. What I'm saying is because I know that they edited that and they've been editing books.
Correct.
They've been
And, and
editing.
and the reason I brought it up is because of the fact that
I don't know if he used those terminology. That's what I'm saying. I'll
True.
look it up right quick. I don't know if he used that
No,
terminology,
it
but
may
it
not.
ultimately yeah, you saying that's what it did, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But
yeah.
from my understanding, if you look at it from this standpoint,
It was childbearing. Give me a
mm,
moment, my love.
correct.
Give me a moment. It was childbearing, and it was that she was going to pretty much need her husband's affection, like she was going to uh, want her husband's attention, and it wasn't going to be there. It was that there's going to be a disconnect between her and the man. Yeah,
Well, to me,
let me look it up
looking
right
at the
quick.
whole thing, I think it was already a disconnect. If they were, it didn't say that she was there by herself at that tree. They both were there together. And and you hear
Well, see, that's the
and
story.
you hear the biblical
Yeah.
story, and you hear these I guess you would say pastors, and the first thing they'll say is that the woman sinned and the man, well, no. And then you use the thing about now they use the thing that a woman is supposed to follow her husband as he follows Christ. Okay, if that's the case, then that's always been. And you look at it, Adam was already there with Eve at the tree, and if he was supposed to be the leader, then Adam should have said, "Hey, no, don't eat that. Come back here." Okay, so if that's the case, then Adam was more wrong than Eve.
See, that's the reason why I don't believe that Adam actually was a leader or the leader. I don't think
Correct.
either one of them were in leadership position. I think that the Anunnaki were, and these were just people who they took a special liking to because they actually perform the duty of producing. So they put them in a comfortable place so that they could keep producing after their own kind. So they were sort of kind of like you have a special cow and a bull that you like the most. They produce the most. So you don't kill them. You let them live so they can keep producing because they're the strongest of. But the story is made up so that they can have an excuse of why to keep man and woman separated. It's a division story. It's where divide and conquer story. So when you devise a story that says, um, I'm going to make childbearing laborers, that makes women pretty much not want to have children. And then you say, oh, and you're going to want to be, you're going to want your husband to listen to you and he won't listen to you. That's division too. So it's
Right.
totally making the woman seem like she's supposed to just give children and a spouse supposed to just put them in her. You know.
And then that's the part I was going to. It said that, and I guess it's in Genesis. If you go to the book and then you look at Genesis chapter 3 verse 16, where it says, if you pull it up, it says, to the woman he said, I will make your pain much worse in giving birth. You will give birth to children in pain, yet your desire will be for your husband. Okay. And then it says, and he will rule over you. Okay. So that goes back to, like you said, we talked about this before, is that it's been over 60, 70, 80 people, maybe 100 people that put their hands on this to write this biblical story, this Bible. And so if you look at the Old Testament, look at the New Testament, and the whole point of that, the whole thing from my looking at it and reading it and everything, it's all about control. It's all about and who you want to control. I want to control a population of people, a sector of people. Whoever reads this story, whoever I can get to believe this story, then I can control them. I can control their life. I can control everything that they're doing. Okay. So if I'm saying that the woman is supposed to be submissive unto her husband. Now I've taken out a whole sector of people. I've taken out a whole sector of women who believe that and follow that. Okay, now, okay, like you said, divide and conquer. Now I got him thinking, oh well, I rule over her, so I'm her head. Okay, now I got to get control. I already got control of her. Now I got to get control of him. So I'll tell him, as you follow Christ. Okay, so then now he has to read and he looking, he reading, he says, oh, uh, what does it say about servants? Uh, exactly. So now I'm like, okay, so that means that now I'm following this. Okay, it's telling me to do this, 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 and this. So now I got the man and I got the woman under my control. So, man, I need you to do this, 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 and this. And woman, because you following the man, you automatically in line step with him. Even though, they say, oh, well, this is a course of order. This is order. No, I think it's out of order. You know, at some point, if you think about it, now I got, like I said, I got both of them under my control. Now it's so easy for me to get what I want. Well, what do you want? Oh well, give me 10% of whatever you make. Whatever it is. You know, and on top of that, you know, that 10%. You know, I need you to be worshiping me. You know, and at the end of the day, they said that if you looking at, if you go back and you're looking at the biblical from a biblical context, and you look at what Jesus said. Jesus said to his disciples, I want you to go out into the world and I want you to take nothing with you and I want you to bring nothing back. Okay. And I don't want you to even have any type of material housing or anything like that because it'll all be given unto you. Whatever you need. Okay, now you come full forward. Okay. The leaders of this of the biblical Christian movement is the Catholic Church. Okay. So they supposed to be following the tenets of Jesus, of Christ. Okay, and you look at it, They got their own uh, um, country, as you could call it. The Vatican is a little sector of land, which is 800 acres, uh, and it's their own country. Okay. When you see the Pope and you see all of the priests and bishops, they're all in pomp and circumstance, gold, ivory, jade, rubies, all of this, you know, everything. It says the first thing, it says worship no idols. Yet you got crosses, you got all of these idols, you got rams and all of this stuff. You got fish, you know, pick a fish, any fish. You got all of this. Okay, but it goes back to that control. If we go back to the first thing with Adam and Eve, that was the first thing to gain that control over them because I needed that man out there working in the field. You know, well, I need him working in the field, but I also need her to bear the children with no uh, say, because I need more slaves in the gold field, in the mining. So I don't need to hear any complaining. I don't need to hear anything from him or her. You see what I'm saying? So that's why I feel that it was the whole thing is to play people.
Yeah, vacation.
Placation. You know, uh, you say, don't touch this, don't eat this, don't eat that. You're gonna die this, you're gonna die that. You know, at the end of the day, you limited anyway.
Yeah, it is Avatar.
Yes, in this avatar.
So we see here it says man does not obey the Elohim God, which is just a lie. It's just a straight lie because if you're genoming someone and you're programming their DNA to have certain things, then you okay. Let's go over it. It says now the snake was able to fool others, more able to fool others than any animal of the field which the Lord, let's say Elohim, had made. He said to the woman, did God or the Elohim say that you should not eat from any tree in the garden? Now, of course, this conversation did not take place. So, if this conversation did not take place, because it did not take place, but we still need the context of this sentence structure. We still need to deal with it because a lot of people are lowering themselves underneath this speech. They're putting themselves underneath this authority, this statement, this whole this verse. People are putting themselves who are eternal underneath the words of another person, editor, bishop, editor. These people that edit the books. Okay, so you're putting yourself under the dogma of these people. Remember that when you put yourself underneath someone else's dogma, you are submitting yourself under another human whom you are calling your God. Now, we already said we know these are the Anunnakis. However, the Anunnakis have servants who, as my husband just identified, that come from the Vatican. Let's call them Jesuits. And then Jesuits are connected to all of the different lodges and groups and shrines and from Muslim faith all the way to all these other faiths that talk about you got to go up Jacob's ladder to get out of this realm of existence, which you do not. You have to just be who you be. Be who you be. But anyway, I'll talk about that some other video. But anyway, it says, did God say that you should not eat from any tree in the garden? Of course, this story isn't true, but the garden, the laboratory, they're putting in a story inside of these people's genome. They're genoing a story. This is what they're doing. And so the genoing that they're doing is they're putting in you being questionable. So in that first sentence, it's actually when they're genoing us, they genoed us to ask questions, to be unsure about things. Verse 2 says, then the woman said to the snake. So now he's genoing the woman to be able to talk to the in the DNA, the snake ladder. Our DNA is like a snake. We're able to talk to the Elohims in our DNA. Now he's making this. creature have an understanding of his speech. Okay, she said supposedly we may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden. Now remember, technically they're in a garden, or they're in a place where they're being taken care of, a laboratory. So yeah, we can eat from it. So of course this is happening under the auspices of Enki, not letting Enlil know he's doing this, because Enlil's the administrator. He has more authority than Enki. Enki is the serpent. He's the snake. He's in the laboratory, and Enki has some ideas. And scientists, or mad scientists, there's, what do they call them? Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde. Well, maybe Enki's bipolar. Who knows? However, Enki decides to, in this DNA ladder, in this tree, he puts in on the branches certain things. Okay. And he said you may not eat from the fruit of the tree. Well, what happened was, prior to that, was Enki, Enlil, and Nunim, they all got together and they were talking about, okay, we're gonna make slaves, and we're gonna make them to worship us, and we're gonna make them where we can't give them too much. We can't give them too much of us, because then how are we gonna control them? So when it says he's putting in questions, he's putting in questions again. But from the tree which is in the center of the garden, God says she's answering ability capabilities for answering questions. Do not eat from it or touch it, or you will die. So now there is this thing where he says do not eat from it. Now we know what they ate. Something got put in where they Inky put in the ability to receive of it. Do not touch it. Now, Inky puts in, now you can touch what they touch, know what they know, and you will not die. Meaning the essence was given to them. He put in a genome not to die, because we don't ever die. So when he says, "Oh, you shall surely die," that's not true. Only the avatar dies.
That's correct. And if you go back to the same principle of man was created to be a slave or a worker, and then I needed that shell to live for a long time. So if I need that shell to live for a long time, there are certain things that you don't eat now to keep yourself alive. Where they say, well, don't eat pork, don't drink sodas. Hey, you want a long life. You don't want your arteries clogged, so don't eat this, don't eat this. Well, there could have been something that says, okay, if you eat from this bad tree, then it'll kill that shell. It'll take the life off of that shell. That shell may have been made to survive 1,000 years. Then you eat from this certain fruit, or whatever it is, then it kills that shell, makes that shell, vulnerable. You know. But I got one question, and it's veering away from this. Here's my question. Okay, we can't even remember how to build a pyramid. We can't even remember how to make certain things. We don't remember stuff that's 500 years, 400 years ago, some things. How in the world, this is just me thinking, that you can take something that's supposed to be thousands of years old and say, oh, well, this is what happened back then. Well, who told you that it happened? Well, it is. It was written. It was we found it on a clay pot. It was written. Well, who told him? You know, well, how you know it wasn't just a story? Well, it's got to be true because it was on a clay pot. Well, that's just like uh, 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 George Lucas writing Star Wars. George Lucas wrote Star Wars, and let's say he put it on a little thumb drive. Well, 300 years later, somebody finds that thumb drive and say, "Oh, there was a god named Darth Vader, you know, and there's another god named Luke Skywalker. Oh, they were, oh. Well, no, that's not true. Well, now it's written on a thumb drive, you know, because it's written on a thumb drive, it has to be true. Well, no, that could have been just a fiction writer that wrote some fiction, and he was putting it on stone. His story, something to entertain the people. The same way as George Lucas is entertaining people. Well, no, that's not true. Well, why you say it's not true? Just like you say that this biblical account is infallible, what makes it infallible? Just because you say it's infallible? You know,
Or just because you choose to believe,
you
just because you choose to believe that it's infallible. I don't want to really. I don't do the idea of expressing myself today. Definitely is not in debate with anybody else.
correct.
You know what I'm saying? So I'm not here to sway or dissuade anybody. I'm here to just tell you what I know.
Right. I guess I was just looking at that from the standpoint of, you know,
Because he's
it,
being a little
it was
serious
it
here.
was so far back. It was so far back, and you're looking at the beginning of it, and you say,
I definitely
well,
get what you're saying.
yeah, it just, to me, like you had said, it makes no sense. You know, it makes no sense. The
The
whole
whole story.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And you look at back at the if somebody's supposed to be all knowing, all seeing, everything, then why couldn't you see this going on? You know, why you had to ask a question, where are you? What happened? You know, uh, who told you this and that? Well, if I'm all knowing, all seeing, I already know. Well, if I already know, then I already know. The
Right.
contradiction is you don't know, so you asking her what happened. You asking him what happened.
And then some people would say, well, and that's a childlike thinking. That's what the questioning, putting it in the genome, the questioning, always question yourself, like questioning in a way where there's a haggerty, there's a weakness in your mind where you're questioning, but you're not questioning in a way, in a format that'll give you an answer. You're questioning in a way where I'm leaving loopholes of escape. So when you say he asked a question, someone will hear that and say, well, he was just doing a rhetorical kind of questioning. No, he was asking a question. When he walked in the cool of the day and you heard the grass moving in the story, the feet moving, he has feet, he has hands, he has eyes, he has a body. And a lot of times, because we're told, and I was told for a long time when I was in that congregation, that body, that we supposed to be childlike. You supposed to be childlike because to be other anything other than being childlike would be your heart would be deceitfully wicked. Your heart's deceitfully wicked. So in order for you to comply, to be controlled, you have to be complicit in accepting that you will never grow from being a child. You will always be a child of the gods. You'll always be a child of the Elohims. You can never branch off and say, I'm tired of being what you say I am. I'm tired of people telling me pay taxes and kiss the hand of the Pope and bow this, that, or the other. And that's what was going on with the Tower of Babel. They were sick and tired of being in the cities of the gods, Enki, Enlil, them. They were tired of that, and they said, "Look, we getting out of here one way or the other. We'll make a way for ourselves. The tower represents DNA, so they may have said we'll tweak with our own DNA and get you out of our DNA." And so the gods came down, the Elohims came down. They say, "Oh, you see what they doing? Let's go in here and let's confuse them." Now we know the author of confusion is the snake, the serpent, but that's Enki. But also Enlil was there too. So Enlil, who was the God Yahweh of the Old Testament, also somehow his DNA got put in this
But
thing as well.
but isn't that the contradiction that it says that God is not the author of confusion?
Yeah, but they're kind of claim Enlil isn't the author of confusion. They're trying to claim that Enki. A lot of people not saying that. I'm saying from my view, Enki is the serpent by the tree, the DNA tree. This is the tree in front of us, the ladder. This is the tree. This
Correct.
is Jacob's ladder. That's the tree of the
Well,
knowledge of good and
well, I'm
evil.
talking about from the biblical standpoint. From the biblical standpoint, when you look at it from the biblical
But see, it's sort of
standpoint,
kind of complicated to
right?
see it
Yeah,
like not blend them
right.
because that story was written by man and the other story was man is man has been propagated to tell certain men have been propagated to tell this Bible story
Right.
to
But I'm saying, like,
like a
okay, from
parable.
from a Bible story,
Mhm.
because we were both in the same uh
Go ahead and express what you want
biblical.
to express
Yeah,
because I know you're
yeah,
coming from a different
yeah. Because we were
standpoint.
both in this biblical. We had both took this biblical journey years ago,
Mhm.
and from the biblical journey, it was told that God is not the author of confusion. Okay, but you go back to your same story, your same biblical story, and God came down and created confusion, and to keep uh, his house in order, because he didn't want people being on the same on the key word is he didn't want people being on this what one mind of one mindset, because they were already on one mindset. Well, wait a minute. I thought that that's what the Christianity and biblical. I'm using that as an example, Christian, but I thought that's what it's all about, being under one mindset. You know, uh, and that was in Corinthians. It says, "God is not the author of confusion, but peace." Okay, so if that's the case, then isn't that an oxymoron? Isn't that going back, you know, against what you know?
See, and then some people will say, well, no, the, for people that have knowledge of more of the story, they would say, no, no, no. The author of confusion is the serpent, it's the devil, which I do agree, but it's more than one devilish person in these stories. They would say, oh, well, that would be the serpent that caused confusion in the garden on that tree. And we're saying, no, that tree is the DNA where they were being made, but there's another DNA being made, and that's the Tower of Babel, where the people are trying to take charge of their own lives. And once again, the same so called Elohims that said, let us make man, said, let us go down and confound them. Because they were saying, we're taking our own rising and falling in our own hands. We're no longer going to be under the authority of these people we see every day. They saw them, the wheel in the middle of the wheel. They saw these ships that had this technology, and they saw that these ships would sit on top of pyramids that they made to rest their ships on after the deluge, after the earth got flooded the second time, the reset. So it says here, like he said, supposedly God is not the author of confusion. So some people will say, well, they're talking about Enlil's not the author of confusion because he's a God of the Ten Commandments. And then they'll say it must be talking about Enki because Enki's the one that's wrapped around the tree and tricked Eve to ask questions and get some wisdom, knowledge, good understanding to know good and evil. Why would you not want somebody to know the difference between good and evil? And why should someone get punished because they want to know right from wrong? Oh, well, you don't need that much information. I think you have to be logical. She ate from some type of tree. Let's say, she got Gino some kind of way that made her ask questions. That made her know you need to ask questions. Now, Inky is looked upon as someone that says, hey, he helped her. He woke her up in her intuition. That made her look like she was the one that had more sense than the other one.
But I think it was already, like you said, I think it was already encoded in her when they. That's where the it wasn't the I don't to me uh I don't think it was actually a physical real tree. I think it was,
That's what I'm saying.
yeah, I think it was something that, because they were in the Garden of Eden, which is the laboratory, and I think it was something in that Garden of Eden that she took, or take this, eat of this, you know, and when she took and she ate of that, she gave it to Adam, and even though Adam ate of it too, they just, like you said, they came to an understanding, you know. And as they're coming to this understanding of knowing good from evil, okay, then why wouldn't I want, like you said, why wouldn't I want you to know good from evil?
Right.
Because unless you got some evil in you and you don't want them to know that you evil, you know, you know, it's
Right. You're
almost
just deceitful.
deceitful. Yes,
You're just deceitful.
yes.
You
And
want all the
so
power. You
if
want to placate people.
yeah, if I created you, if I know that the first group of people already rebelled, they already said, hey, we tired of doing this type of labor. We're not gonna do this. Well, now I gotta have a second group. And I don't want the second group to act like the first group. So I gotta keep you placated. I gotta keep you hidden in the dark. I gotta keep you dumb. I
That's
want
why
you
you
to think,
Gino him.
yeah, I want you to think that I'm the best of the best.
Mhm.
You know, so as I'm keeping you dumbed down, as you would say,
Mhm.
you know, then if I'm keeping you dumbed down, then I don't want you drinking this this from this. Okay, if I want to keep you uh not knowing that water can help you, then I'm not gonna give you water. I'm gonna give you something else. Uh, if I want to keep you uh spiritually, as you could say, dehydrated, I'm not gonna give you no water. I might give you just a little bit, a drop, a drip, but I ain't gonna let you get to the river. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, like I said, I think that Eve asked questions. She was built to ask questions. She was built to want to know more. What's going on? What's this? What's that? Whereas man initially was built to say, put his head down. He ain't gonna ask no questions. He just gonna go do what he gonna do, cause that's the way he was genome to do. Not ask a lot of questions, just go out and do. Okay. Now you say, well, if that's the case, well, why? What about men now? Okay, we go back to the same principle because I wanted to create something that could self-replicate, that could reproduce on its own without me having to keep going back and forth to the laboratory. Okay, a man has 23 chromosomes. A woman has 23 chromosomes. When that man and that woman come together and they procreate and they have a child, logically, in logical sense, you would say, okay, that child's supposed to have 46 chromosomes because the mama has 23 and the daddy has 23. No, that child has 23 chromosomes. Well, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. Well, where did 23 chromosomes come from? Okay, let's go back. Okay, the child's going to get some of those chromosomes from his mama and some of those chromosomes from his daddy. Okay, and the determining factor is that when he gets those chromosomes, you may have some boys that are born that will ask questions. You have some girls that are born that all they want to do is go out and work and do physical labor. Not saying that they're a man, it's just that they've gotten some of those chromosomes from their father, or they've gotten some of those chromosomes from their mother. That doesn't mean that they're a woman or a man. That just means that they're avatar, that they've gotten some of those chromosomes from each one of the parents, which allows them to think better, which allows them to work better. That's what the whole procreating is about. Is that I wanted to have more slaves out there. I wanted to have self-replicating slaves. Okay, now I got the best of both worlds. Now I got a slave that can think and do on its own, which is the best of both worlds. Now instead of Eve, which is a thinker, you know, and a bearer of the children, you know, or Adam, who is just a laborer, who's not going to think, he's just out there. Because you have to think about it. If I'm gonna make something better, if I start off with just one thing and I say, oh, it's just this, and this is just this, that's just the foundation. Well, I want to build up on that foundation. Adam and Eve were just the foundation. Now you done replicated all these other kids and beings and stuff like that. So now, yes, they have become smarter in their own sense and thinking, you know. So at the end of the day, uh, I don't think it was a fact that uh, Eve was came after Adam, because we don't know if she
Yeah, I
came
don't think
after
so neither.
we don't know if she came after Adam. It could have been right on that same time frame that it was like, oh well, I don't see man alone, blah blah blah. No, it wasn't. I don't think it was like that. I think that Adam was there. Adam was working. They said, oh well, shoot, uh, well he just out here by himself, and we can't. We gonna have to get some later. He done died. He may die off. We gotta be able to keep replicating him. Well, how we gonna do that? We're gonna have to keep going back to the lab. Well, I don't want to do that. Well, let's make uh just like us.
Yeah, let's
The-
have some females in
yeah,
here, some
yes. Let's
men and not
let's
females in here.
yeah, let's make we done made man in our image. Let's make a woman in our image.
Cause that's the only way
Yeah,
they're gonna get those
yeah.
slaves.
So
Period.
so then they could come together
Mhm.
and they could have, you know, their own kids. And now we got a whole nation of slaves.
Yeah, because initially they were making all kinds of humanoids mixed with animals. Because first they was doing like with Gilgamesh, they were doing all types of experiments to the point where they could not figure out how to get even eggs. Some of the things wouldn't even germinate. The seeds wouldn't even germinate, according to the stories. So of course the story isn't like Genesis. Genesis sort of kind of is a parable. It's sort of kind of a story that like when it says so they sold fig leaves together and made themselves clothing. So that right there is showing you that there is in their genome information to be able to take care of themselves, to be able to clothe themselves. This is
But
a coded story to me.
and also if you look at it before that, this is then the eyes of both of them were open and they knew they were without clothes. So it's almost like having a go back and you say that you got a veil
Hmm.
over your eyes. You don't know right from wrong. Excuse me. You don't know right from wrong. You don't know good from evil. You just got that veil over your eyes.
You're just a
You
human.
just
You're
out
an
there
animal
doing.
because of a human being, like an
Exactly.
animal.
And so now that veil has been removed. Now you're like, wait a minute, this ain't right.
This is the thing. How did the veil get removed? Okay, the veil got removed based off of the Anunnaki females and the Anunnaki male Enki. Now, there was something done that was inappropriate. Enki started being a scientist, started experimenting to the point where he was using his own waters. He was using his own essence physically and in the petri dish. Homeboy really got down. I always say Inky is the one that rules Diddy's parties because Inky was doing stuff that his children that worship him do in the now in the living. That Inky literally went too far in his experimenting because this thing wasn't working right. He finally got it working right. They finally because he wanted to impress his father and knew the most high. He wanted to impress Anu. And Anu really was only about getting this thing moving because Allah came through the astro and somehow he got here and he found the planet and instead of them honoring him the way he thought they was because he got put out because he bit off the testicles and the private part of Anu, so Anu no longer could produce children, just Elohim, supposedly God. And so he got disbanded because, dude, you can't do that. You don't supposed to fight on that level, whatever. Anyway, so I wanted people to understand also that all these books of ancient, all these books of thousands of years ago, not tens of thousands of years ago, just thousands of years ago, these new books after the reset, the last reset, these books are just noting codes and decodes of information, not really telling you the true story. They're just dropping tokens and coins, and you have to look in between the lines. So, like he said, both of their eyes were open, meaning that finally they got to a point in the genome that once the YHVH or YHWH was put in there. I don't know whether or not this is actually true, but it does make sense. This because this could be the Jews just still trying to exalt Enlil, and right before they come, they want everybody to be serving Yahweh because even though the Hebrews serve Yahweh or Yahuwah, they they need for people to believe that this 10,565 is what is in us. It could be, couldn't be. According to the Anunnaki story, this could pretty much be what Yaakov Jacob's ladder was talking about. So him wrestling with God all night long, them in the laboratory wrestling to get a blessing, to get things started. All these stories are coded. However, now they're saying because of Corey, who turned 19 in 2020, they got a 10,56665 assets in here now. So now they've changed the DNA code in order to make sure that we're still slaves, to make sure that those folks who got the slave shotgun, they want to make sure people in their DNA get recoded to be more of the story, to be just a worker, men to stay being slaves to a system, what's it called, capitalistic system, and women to just produce. But they don't want you to produce smart children. They want you to produce children that have ADHD, all these other things that's coming out. That's what they want from us.
Well, and then you talk about that, and we'll go back to the whole game system, the whole system that you said. Well, how do you know that it's true? How do you know that they're still trying to control you, or dumb you down, or keep you uh, in that particular place? Well, I'll give a prime example. Um, Beyonce didn't finish school, high school. Jay-Z didn't finish high school. You know, you could take 80%, 90% of the rappers. You know,
Monique didn't
yeah,
finish it.
yeah.
What the third dude name is? The GED guy that always bragging.
DL Hughley.
DL
Yeah,
Hughley.
and it goes back to
On
these,
and on and
and yeah,
on.
on and on and on. And these are the people that they're putting in front of you to literally control you.
I don't
Literally,
even think Cat Williams finished because he
no, he
traveled so
didn't.
much with his
He did.
parents.
Yeah, that's correct. He didn't either. So they're putting these people in front of you to control you, to make you believe a story. You know, to get you to uh, buy into anything they want you to buy into.
The division, keep the
Yeah,
division going.
exactly.
Just keep the dividing of humanity going. Male against female, husband against wife. Because in our DNA, even though we were created, to worship, we're also created for confusion.
Yeah,
Because the author, whose genoing is full of confusion, so you're going to get confusion because he is confusion as well.
because that was a scary thing to me. I think it was a scary thing to them. Is that all these people of one mind, of one
You
idea,
talking about Babylon?
of
Yeah.
one thinking, that they decided that they were going to do this.
That's what it was.
We can build what we want to do. We can do whatever.
Mhm.
If we can all come together, we could do anything we wanted, anything that we put
Our
our
minds to.
mind to, not our minds, our mind. So that means that they were of one mind, of one thought, trying to do one thing. That scared
And
the
that's
hell out of them.
and that's what
And
Adam and
so,
Eve was doing.
yes,
One mind,
and because
agreeing.
yeah, because it scared them, they just said this is never going to happen again. And so it's not going to happen again. So let's do this. So from that time forward, people have been in a state of confusion, you know. And a lot of times you wonder how people walking around, they're saying, well, we can't find this Tower of Babel. We can never find this Tower of Babel. It's not something that's a brick and mortar. I think. I think this Tower of Babel was the one mind, the one thinking, where they had decided that they're going to, if we believe in this story that there is a Garden of Eden, there's things. I believe that they were coming up against this mountain, that wherever it was at, you know, and that they were building something to get to uh, where they were, to get to where Enlil and Enki were.
Right.
You know,
They
it
living
could,
sitting in the cloud, never
yeah,
knowing they
it,
ships.
yeah, exactly. You know,
So tear their
so
ass down.
and so that's the same thing. So they were like, hey,
Sick of
they
me
can't
being
do this.
slaves.
Same thing. They say, well, Noah had an ark, and it was supposed to be this, and this. I don't care how big Noah's ark was. If he was going to put all these animals in there, they wouldn't have fit. So you have to understand and take it for what it
You
was.
gotta be logical.
Logical. It was not the animals themselves.
Exactly.
It was the
Gina.
genome, the essence of the animal.
The pastry dish, just
Yes.
like in the garden, it
Yeah.
wasn't a literal garden. It was a laboratory that was.
If I can take the
Yeah.
DNA of the animal and put it into a petri dish, or the same thing we're doing now,
Mm-hmm.
where we taking the eggs and the sperm and we freezing them and putting them up. Well, now I could take the egg and the sperm, uh, 10, 20, 30 years later, 40 years later, you know, and I could produce a human. Because you have to understand that all it takes is an egg and a sperm and put it in a petri dish.
Mm-hmm.
And you can grow a human, as they say, grow anything you want to grow. So uh, you have to take it for what it is. You run around looking for an ark made out of wood and made out of something else, little wooden nails, and you're never going to find that because, like you said, it
All
was
these stories are
genome.
coded.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was genome. It's coded stories.
Yeah.
And the same thing with Babylon. You're not gonna find this huge tower, these rubble of this huge tower that
Why
has
do you
been
need
built.
that anyway?
No, you don't need
You
that.
don't need it.
Yeah. So that goes back to the same thing with Adam and Eve, is that because you didn't want them to be of one mind, of one thinking, then the confusion and the delay started right then and there
Mhm.
because you wanted to keep the man and the woman in a state of confusion and delay. You didn't want the man and the woman to be of one mindset. So you said you want to make the woman inferior by
Mhm.
saying that she should submit to her husband.
And when you
And then you,
when you say, remember life and death comes from our mouth. So you can create from words. So when they say moves your hands. You're doing something. When you
mhm,
think something, you say it, and in saying it, your hands get to move doing it. So Enki literally, though when they're saying say, he said, this said, that means that's action. Something's literally going on. They may not show you that he's actually creating something, but it's not the story isn't as it's not as it's written. It's
and
just
the
not.
same, yeah, like you said, and that goes like you said with Adam.
Mm.
Even he is told to be submissive.
Yeah.
You know, so if you can make both of them, like going back to full circle, if you can make both of them submissive, but being disagreeable with each other,
Exactly.
you know, but yet you both submissive to me, then who who's got the better uh what you call 'em? Hand?
Master according to the flesh. So you have Inky creating genomes, the male and the female genomes, through using the female Anunnakis with him, doing something they shouldn't be doing on that level. So you have they creating a male and they're creating a female. They write the story or tell those who write the stories and edit the stories to say that these people were created at different times, maybe a few minutes apart, who knows? And somehow, Gino in the woman is to submit, is to comply, to subserve underneath the male. Why? Because she has a wound. She's a man, but she has she's going because she's going to bear the pain and the brunt of everything, like a slave, like someone in a field. She has to now be seen as the lesser because she would be the one in the field getting darkened. And when you're dark, that's supposed to be of darkness. So here she is, darkened in the mind. However, even though she was supposedly carrying the load, being darkened like a slave in the field, she still had the intuition. So now the person with the intuition that can see in the spirit goes underneath someone that's also created in Geno to just be laborers, to be sweat from the brow, to be focused on the moving and shaking of creating the world systems. This person who's not has much intuition as the female, now he puts his bricks on her. He puts his power over her, the one with the intuition. Now this guy who's making this world, who's creating, digging the trenches and getting the gold out the earth and creating the buildings and doing all the laborious things. Now, instead of him kicking butt and acting a fool like the Gigi's did, the lesser gods did, or humanoids did, now they created this next group of beings, humanoids, to say the male to say, okay, we're going to create you to suppress the woman to intuition and you suppress her and we're going to suppress you without telling you we're suppressing you because now we're going to let you be the gods or the man of the world. The world was created for man. So now the man suppresses the woman. The Elohim suppresses the man by saying that, you know, we're your gods. And so now there's a threefold thing going on. You got the Elohim, the Anunnaki suppressing the man, and the man suppressing the woman, and the woman and the man suppresses the children, but the woman suppresses the children. So there's a system, a locking system that happens to secure them being empowered. So it's like a house Negro telling on the Negroes in the field, because the master, according to the flush, who's not there all the time, needs somebody who's comfortable. So man gets to be comfortable, and even though he's not comfortable, because he still has to work. It's just it's just a weird thing they did, but it's worked on to this point. But this is the thing I always say: by no means does my avatar tell me who I am. I'm an eternal being. I am as much as the creator is the creator. We all are creators. As much as source is source, I am source. As much as I am that I am that I am. And that's what we've lost. An understanding that though we were Geno, that does not lessen who we be eternally. So no one has authority and power over you eternally, because we're all I am that I am source. We're all of that. I don't know how people can even separate it. But that has been put in our genomes to be dumbed down.
Yeah, and I think that people get so caught up in the worship, so caught up in being needy, needing something
Yeah, it's so
to
true.
look up to
So true.
instead of looking inward.
Right.
They would rather look up, look outward, look up. Uh, instead of taking responsibility for their own actions, for their own thinking, their own being. They'd rather have somebody to say, "Well, oh, I'm covered,"
Oh, my
or
life is predestined
my life.
already. So what's the
Correct.
point?
Or
Yeah.
they're always looking up. They're always believing
Mm.
the 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 what's being told to them. Oh, I got all of these women waiting on me. And ooh, and have I got I'm covered.
All them
I
virgins.
could I could sin and do but I'm forgiven. Anything. They thinking that it's this. You know or I need to be by myself, to be cleansed, or I need to beat myself to be cleansed, you know, uh,
Goddamn.
you know, and believing all of that and not going inward and saying, you know what, I am.
And you know the thing also, I was looking here thinking about why are people so afraid of the 666, even though I know that they've now just recently put that in the genome. The reason why I think people are afraid of the 666 is because the number seven is completion. So you have 777. So that means you missed the mark 3 times: spirit, soul, and body. So that's pretty much what these wannabe guys are trying to do. They're trying to put us in a trifold lockdown to the planet. However, you really can't be locked down if you are aware that no one is greater than you and you're lesser than nobody. And the whole Tower of Babel thing is a great example of how when people come to the knowledge of who they be, how there are those people who have been in power, want to stay in power, and because they want to stay in power, they're going to do some stuff through the media and through the pyramid scheme to keep you on the lockdown.
Catch this. I want you to catch this.
Hmm.
You ready for it?
Hmm.
The Tower of Babel is a biblical myth that appears in the book of Genesis, specifically in
Genesis 11, 1 through 9. And that's a 9/11.
which is
An emergency.
there you go. So it was emergency to them that they stop this shiggity before it gets started. So I need to confound and confuse them
Yeah.
for thousands of years to come because we don't want this to happen anymore.
Exactly. Yes.
So they have made it up. I think they have made it up into the laboratory, or
Yeah.
right at the doors of the laboratory. You know, so if you right at the doors of the laboratory, I need to confound and confuse you. And then this is how they confounded and they confused them with the changing of the language. But right behind that, what did they do? Or right before that, they had the great flood to get rid of the first group.
Mm-hmm.
Then they
Good
come
old.
behind. They didn't want it because I need you. I
Mm-hmm.
need you to still be that slave. I need you to still be that the one I control. So I done got rid of the first group that rebel. So the second group, I can't get rid of you because then that means I'd have to try to start over, which I can't do. So I just need to confound and confuse you, you know.
People say, well, how in the heck if they flood, if the earth got divulged initially, how in the world did people multiply still? Well, guess what? Enki, with all his scientific experimenting, had sexual relations to make somebody called Noah. He didn't make him in a petri dish, people. Enki, I always call him the author of Diddy's Parties. Enki liked to play around with his thing, and he liked to mess around because they are humanoids. And these Nephilims, these men that like to have relations with these women that got created because they weren't too far apart in their genome. They want to make it, oh, the devils had sex with the women. No, these were men. And I'm sure these men were probably fine as shitty. And these women liked these men because these men look good. However, the earth flooded because of Nibiru coming near in our space. And lo and behold, Enki agreed with Enlil and them that they were gonna go off planet and he wasn't gonna tell nobody anything. And what Enlil actually did was believed Enki. Enki being the serpent, Enki doing what Enki wanted to do because Enki knew that Noah was his child, and Enki didn't want Enlil to know. And so Enki talked to a wall and a bush and told Noah without telling Noah that, hey, it's going to be a flood, and the people in your city or your town that want to be saved, they can get on. You're going to build this blah 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 and this size, this or this. He gave him the tips on how to build a submarine or a boat. And like my husband said earlier, the animals were not on the ship in the format you think. They were they were in they were in technology where you can freeze them or you can keep their DNA in petri dishes, and they were put in on the ships like that. It wasn't this wood ship, this pitiful looking thing. There was a Anunnaki that stayed where they were at to help them before the flood came. And then at the end of it, he burnt the meat, and Enki and Enlil smelt the meat. And Enlil said, "What the hell going on? How the hell did these humans survive? We thought we killed the Nephilims and them, their children they made." And then once Enki and Enlil found out that, hey, this is Noah's my child, because when he was born, everybody thought he was a Gigi child. He was a lesser god, and he was, and he was Enki's child because Enki liked to drop the bomb on people and have sex with them. And lo and behold, because they brothers, Enlil said, well, this must be the creator of all's will. So let's just do it anyway because I feel like we might as well just start the earth back over with these people. And they've just been keeping that going, and they divided the land up. And there you have it. That's why there's so much different secret societies today, because all the secret societies are serving one of the Elohims.
Yep. And then you say, well, how do you know about that about Noah? Because Noah was not, it would have said albino. It didn't say he was albino.
Right.
It said he glowed, you know. So at the end of the day,
That's the book of Yasher, because
yeah,
in the biblical story, they don't give, that's a coded book, they don't give the details, but there
yeah,
are other books that literally tell you these stories. You can go from the Old Testament reading it, and then the Old Testament stops in their notation of it, and then the book of Yasher continues with its notations. Isn't that amazing? Yeah,
yes, it is.
yeah. So in the Old Testament, you'll hear about the story of Noah and Rebecca and them, all those stories. But then you go to another book, the book of Jasher, and it continues the story. And what was this, 2015, we were reading the Old Testament and we were reading the book of Yasher. My husband had one, I had the other, and we were comparing. His story stopped and mine continued, and we looked at each other and said, wait a minute. We thought the story's going to stop at the same time. We had just purchased this book.
Yep. But then that's why I say you got to take everything with a grain of salt. You got to be willing to go within to get an understanding, not listening to what somebody else is telling you. You know, yeah, you can read different books and different things, but then you have to put it all together. You have to come to an understanding. Because if you just going off of one book and say, hey, this is it, this is infallible, this is what it is, that's it, ain't nothing else, you know, well, then aren't you limiting yourself and your knowledge? That's just like when you go to school. They don't just teach you out of one book, they teach you out of many books because they want you to be a well rounded person. So it's the same way when it comes to life. You know, to be a well-rounded person, you have to take everything that's put forth to you, and then you got to come to your own understanding. You know, and if you go back and you look at and you think about it, I'll give you an example. Most people tend to think that when Moses supposedly left Egypt, he left, uh, he had a child, and they came back, and the child was only 10 years old. No, when Moses left, Moses was gone for about 40 or 50 years. And when Moses came back, Moses was an elderly man. He was not this 30-year-old, this 35-year-old person that you see in the movies coming back. No, he had left a long time, supposedly, and then came back. He had lived a whole nother life, you know, and then came back supposedly. And then the same thing if you look at the story about Methuselah. Methuselah supposedly had all of this knowledge, but Methuselah was a envoy, or as you could say, a cross between supposedly the gods and man, or whatever you want to call it. Uh, well, the Anunnaki in man, and he, because he had knowledge, and because he could understand, and they wanted him to be a historian to write down the history. You have to take it from that standpoint and go and look at it. Where you say, well, you believe in that. No, I didn't say I believe. I'm looking at everything. You got to take everything into account. And then,
Because
it,
believing is make believe. So you can't just go off of a thought without any substantial evidence. You have to, in order to believe something, you have to know.
right,
It ain't about your
yeah,
feeling. I know that I know that I know. No, it has to go beyond that kind of knowing. Because that kind of knowing is placation. That kind of knowing is being childlike.
well,
I know my parents gonna take care of me as a kid. Well, what if they don't?
well, let me give you an example. Okay, I'll give you another example.
Because some parents don't.
The picture that's up here now. Okay, let's say that I have an orange, and they say for hundreds of years this has been known as an orange. Okay, then we dig up something like these statues, and they're holding something, and you could tell it's an orange because it's got the same characteristics, it's got the same properties, it looks the same, and the way they describe it, it tastes the same, and we say, oh, that's an orange. Well, they call it an apple, and because it's older than when we said it's supposed to be an orange, we said that it was an orange 100 years ago. Well, 300 years before that, or 400 years before that, they said it was an apple. So are you going to believe that it was an orange? Or are you going to believe that it was an apple? I'm going to believe it was called an apple because they was there 400 years before that, and they named it an apple. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same principle, is that if I go back 1,000 years or 2,000 years, and I just find some jars of clay, and they got some writings in it, right? Okay, and the writings look okay. Yeah, I can understand that. Okay, those writings. Okay, I see it. Well, then I go and we digging up the earth, and we finna make a new settlement, a new city, and lo and behold, I found this underground cavern, and I see some writing on the wall, and so we do what we call carbon dating, and that writing on the wall is 15,000 years old, and it's got, hey, this look like the same story, but wait a minute, this different. It's talking about these people that came down. Wait a minute, it's talking about, wait a minute, these people made Adam, but his name wasn't Adam. Oh, so it's a continuation, like you said. I think you, and because I know you're in there, she said, do you take the understanding of do you just go with what you know? You just gonna stick with that, what you know, or are you going to get educated? Are you going to take all of that into consideration and say, Yeah, I want that knowledge. I want to learn. I want to see what this is about. You know, am I gonna open my eyes to gain an understanding, or do I want to keep that veil over my eyes? Do I want to still be in that slave mentality? Do I still want to keep my head that servant mentality? Do I want to keep my head down, or do I want to raise my head up and see what's going on? Because I could keep my head down, and lo and behold, a rock done fell out the mountain, hit me in the head because I got my head down. Or can I look up and look around and say, oh, wait a minute, there's a hole in the ground and then there's a rock coming. Let me miss both of them. You know. Yeah, and so what my wife is saying, that what if you come to a place where you don't know what to do after you don't got the knowledge? You know, well, what to do with your life. You know, you start every day anew. You start every day trying to gain some knowledge, trying to get an understanding. You know, because at the end of the day, like we say, you got to get your own understanding. Yeah, that gives you a purpose to gain knowledge. You know, um, one of the things is that people don't want you. And our prime example, if somebody don't want you to read something for yourself or to get an understanding for yourself, then something's not right with that. If I got to read a book for you, if I got to read a paragraph for you, if I have to tell you what that means and constantly say, well, no, you can't read it because you can't understand it. Let me read it and let me tell you what it means. Let me tell you what it's saying.
And then once a person comes into the knowledge of, okay, once these Elohims realize that people are determining that they're going to get information, then they say, okay, we're going to have to play another game. This game is now we're going to put our people in leadership positions because now these people have access to books. Even though these books are information we've written, it's still leading them to a mindset of freedom. They don't want to be in the Elohim system and cities, and they want to build their own tower of awakening. They want to say, I want to spiral myself out of here. I want to get myself out of slavery, out of servitude, out of less than. And so they then say, let's do a crusade, eons on eons of time, every time the reset happens. And let's put people in power positions that in the dark are doing what Enki does. Inky, remember I said Inky could be absolutely the party's manager for Diddy. So they find themselves leadership positions, find themselves at Diddy's parties. They find themselves inviting people on their platforms who absolutely are part of the Holly stick, the magic stick in Hollywood. And they find themselves in leadership positions that give them wealth and fame because they're serving the brotherhood, which is Enki Enlil, the Anunnaki brotherhood. It's so simple that it's mind-boggling. I want to also bring back what I was talking about. I had stepped out for a moment, and what I was trying to say was my husband related, but I want y'all to hear me say it. What I was saying was, once you come to the fact that you need to just accept, you need things to be clear. You need things in your life to be transparent. You no longer want to have lack of knowledge. Now, look, Enki or Enlil clearly said that for lack of knowledge, his people perish. So we're designed to perish because we're in perishing avatars, bodies, but they have a system of reincarnation and they swiped your memory and they put that in the DNA as well. So once you wake up to what it be inside the game, because once you leave this game, you go through the tunnel of light and you haven't awakened to the truth of you're just like them, that you should not be worshiping them. You should not be labeling one the big G, one the little G. They're all family. If you wake up now, when you may not have to go through the go. You don't have to, maybe don't have to go through the tunnel of light. This is the tunnel of light right here, the DNA. That's the Stargate, SG1. They go through that water, going backwards as you came in. Same thing on their head here. This is DNA, the DNA of their minds. See the hats? That's the DNA of their minds. Okay, they sit on your DNA.
And I guess if you're looking at that same uh, image, they're molding the clay,
Yes.
you know. And but the whole premise of today, the question was, uh, why must a woman be subservient, or why is it considered a woman to be subservient?
And also the
And
question is, why should a man have to sweat from his brow on to the point where he can't look up and learn intuition to get intuition? Why must he be the ultimate slave and not get feelings and understanding and tap into a greater mind?
and I think we answered that question because of the confusion. Because if I want to keep both of them confused, because at the end of the day, we both have something that can help each other. But if we keeping each other, if they keeping us confused or keeping us separated in our minds, not our physical being, because we can come together anytime and procreate. But if I can keep you separated mentally, and I'm keeping you separated mentally, then we're never going to be the whole person that we're supposed to be.
So, like right here on this picture, you see a female. This is a female creating. They're creating. Say,
And sacrifice at the
yes,
same time.
yeah. And this is Dagon, the fish, which that would be Enlil. But look at these trees on her head, the pyramids. That's like the pyramid you see with all the different lodges and stuff. The steps of the pyramid is also like the pine tree. So much can be said about this. So much can
And like I said, that the question is that like uh, because you want that exactly, you want that woman to be subservient, and then same thing, you want the man to be subservient unto you, whereas at the end of the day you get all of the glory, all of the ultimate, you know whatever, you know and because we don't want to take a moment to pause and say, hey, you know what, let's do this thing together. Let's work together. Let's think together. Let's collaborate together. If we can collaborate, this is the thing with a man and a woman. If you can collaborate in the bedroom, then you should be able to collaborate on anything. If you can collaborate in the bedroom, but you can't collaborate with your finances, he got an account, she got an account, you know. Uh, but we got three accounts. He got an account, I got an account, and we got a joint account. Well, that's still separation, you know. No, if y'all can, it's almost saying that, oh, me and him in the bed, and uh, he got a woman on the side of the bed, I got a man on the other side of the bed, but yet we in the bed together, but we got another woman on the left side and a man on the right side. Uh, no, if you're supposed to be together, then why you gotta have three accounts? Why you can't just have one account and have a checking and a savings? You know, in that same account. You know,
Because okay, my husband's analogy is like really, really deep because he's like really laying it hard there. A lot of people ain't gonna catch that. They can, but that takes loyalty. In the game, like he's talking about, the bed of life we create in the bed, and because we create life in the bed, the most important thing on this earth is repopulating the earth. However, we can do all of this intimate things together. However, the stuff that really isn't that important, which is money, fiat currency, we can't unite there. So if you can't unite your finances together, then why are you uniting in the bedroom together, which is so much more important? That means you don't value who you be. You don't know who you be. Now, let's say we step outside of the bedroom, and let's say we deal with let's just deal with finances. The reason why it's important to unveil or be transparent in your finances and be on a team in finances is because that's part of one of the curses of the man, the sweat of your brow. In order for man to be able to see, woman has to come together with him on that regard for him to see. That's part of what was Gino. If you come together and y'all come together on that regard and break that curse, break that program, and unite together, then he no longer. I'm not talking about the woman has to work. What I'm saying is you come together. Any funds that come in, you understand that hey, this teamwork. Now we know we're avatars, we in avatars and we're eternal beings, but we're playing a game. And the game called life, it's better to team up with someone maybe who has a different genome than you so that you can always fill in the gaps. Because there's a lot of tricks and a lot of plots being played. Now, could an individual figure out this by themselves? Of course, but that's not the scenario he was setting up. He was setting up the scenario of the garden. He was setting up the scenario of how we were created through sexual relations. That happened too. So what he's saying is, hey, if you can lay down with the most important part of you, that's the garden story, then why can't you lay down here too with the finances? Why can't you lay that down? Because if you don't lay it down, and you two agree on finances, because um, labor, money is life. When you're laboring for something every day, that's life. That's your life. The bedroom's your life, creates life, but working creates life as well because that's part of the program. I think that, like with the woman, with her situation, uh, man and woman being willing to see one another, having roles to play, and the roles have nothing to do with subservient, not to be subservient, not to submit, but to work together to break the curse, work together to build a tower, work together to elevate, work together to see through the veil, work together to not be part of the odds' play. They are the odds. He's on down the road in life. You have to work together. You can't just listen to Toto, the dog, all the time. Toto is the dogma, the God, and Toto pulled the veil because he was God. He was a little God. He pulled the veil, and even though you're aligned and you're supposed to have courage, and you don't have courage, and even though you're a tin man and you don't supposed to have a heart, all of these different characters, the straw man, all of these characters, the whole goal was to ease on down life through the path of gold, which they needed for Nibiru. I'm not trying to get off Keter. What I'm saying is that whole team, from the Scarecrow to the Tin Man and Dorothy and them, all needed one another. They needed one another. However, ultimately, the dog really was the one that exposed it all, and the dog was the little god. And until you see yourself, even if you can just see yourself as a little I am. I wouldn't say see yourself a little I am because we all equal. But some folks got to start that. You got to see yourself as just as they are. Because if you don't start coming from under man's control and man coming from under the Elohim's control, we all are going to still play out the same play. And this play going to leave us more and more into losing who we be. And I know it's easy to lay in the bed with a whole bunch of confusion, a whole bunch of unnecessary sleeping around that we do with things, sleeping around with ideas, sleeping around with dis-ease. It comes a point where you have to gird up your loins with truth. And loins is the private part. You have to gird up the truth that we came a certain way. We were created a certain way. Accept that truth how we came. Don't bow to nobody. Don't bend over to nobody. Understand that, hey, if you're married, hey, you actually got someone that actually can help you elevate as well as you elevate in knowledge, wisdom, and good understanding. We have to just accept that the rest of your life may have to just be about pursuing knowledge, because without knowledge you do perish, because you don't know what to hold on to, and you cast away restraint.
Well, my wife said it all. I guess that's exactly what I was about to say. And this is I'll say it this way: is that stop letting other people control you, because that's only devaluing yourself.
Yeah. Like
Subscribe,
and hit
hit that
that
bell.
bell.